So this is what it looks like when there's an injury, and it's called anatomical failure. So essentially, when we look at the joints, they move in a particular direction. And first, there's active range of motion. You can see right there that the whitest part of that is the active range of motion. And that absorbs a certain amount of energy. Now, if there's more energy than when you're at the end of active range of motion, then the energy goes in the passive range of motion. You can see that as the second line there, passive range of motion. It's from a little darker as it spreads out. Now, if there's no more energy, there's no more injury. That's it. Now, if there is more energy coming in, then it goes into the joint space, or what's called the paraphysiological joint space. And that's the striated area right there. So if there's no more energy, then we don't have an injury. And that's the goal, really, of humans when they have defensive mechanisms. The defensive mechanisms is all about absorbing that energy into the active passive joint motion before it gets into anatomical failure. That's the goal of it. So that's what it looks like. And when we have these ligamentous lesions, that's what's happening is the energy is going into or going past the active passive joint motion right into the ligament. And there are factors that will magnify these, and we call them injury magnifiers. Some of the simple, easy ones are if we have our defenses up. If our defense is up, when we know we're going to get hit, we'll start absorbing some of that energy, which means it's going to lessen the amount of energy going through active passive joint motion. And it may totally even stop the energy before it gets to anatomical failure, which means now there's no injury. So that's what having the defenses up is about. The next one, a common one, or if the joints are locked out. Like if the patient's head is turned looking in the rearview mirror or speaking to the person next to him. Well, as soon as the joints are locked out, we know that there's no more possible active range of motion to absorb the energy. So when those joints are locked out, there's no absorption in active range of motion. Now we're just dealing with a little bit of overpressure motion and joint motion and right into anatomical failure. And that's why people get hurt easier when they're not paying attention and they're going to get hit because they don't absorb the energy. So it goes into their body faster and it goes through the ranges of motion quicker to get to anatomical failure. So that's a major one. Same with whiplash injury. So defense is up, whiplash injury. Whiplash injury is essentially a common injury magnifier. A couple different reasons. When the person's hit, now this is only being hit from behind is a whiplash injury. When it's hit and their head is not abutted against the rest headrest, well, their head starts going back. It weighs 9 to 12 pounds. And then what stops it from going backwards is the anatomy. So it actually goes through active passive joint motion. And then it's the anatomy that starts ripping and tearing to stop the head from going backwards. The facets get jammed, ligaments get torn, fascia gets torn, arteries, tendons, muscles, they all start tearing micro tears. That's what stops the head from going backwards. And then there's typically a whipping effect where now the head whips forward and it's the anatomy in the front now that stops it. Usually that's why the patients have jaw, T-bone, TMJ problems from the whipping forward and back. But you're looking at the same mechanism with anatomical failure going through the three ranges of motion into anatomical failure. So when we look at all these different injury magnifiers, that's what we pay attention to. You know, the big ones are first knowing about the three ranges of motion relative to anatomical failure and energy absorption. And then where the joints locked out, where the defense is up, and then, how much friction. And those are the three main variables that will determine how much energy went directly into anatomical failure as opposed to being absorbed. Kind of like friction. When there's a lot of friction, the car is standing still on dry road, the energy coming in has to overcome a tremendous amount of friction and weight. Well, that absorbs energy, which lessens the amount of energy into the occupant. Well, just the opposite happens if the car is moving. So if the car is moving and they're hit, there wasn't much to very little friction to stop or slow down that energy, and most of it now goes into the occupant. And now what's the occupant doing? Well, are the occupant's defenses down? Well, that's not good. Is their head turned? That's not good. So in that one simple, we had 3 injury magnifiers. The energy was not absorbed very much when it hit because the car was moving. The patient's defenses were down, so they didn't absorb any energy through active, passive, or joint motion. And their head was turned talking to their friend or looking in the rearview mirror. The joint was locked out. So all that energy went right in through the individual, past active range of motion, right into passive range of motion, joint motion, and anatomical failure. That's why these injury magnifiers become important. But this is the relativeness of anatomical failure.